What's up, guys? Dave Rubin Fishing here, back in with another video. It is the dog days of summer. It is hot pretty well everywhere in the country. Obviously up north probably not as bad, but down south probably worse. It's currently 8:30, still 80 degrees. That's how we're shooting this video inside. But basically, to understand what's going on with the bass right now is they're everywhere. They're very spread out. They're eating shad, but they're not eating shad like they were a month ago. You know, the big ones. They're eating the shad fry from this season's spawn. So they're a lot smaller. Basically, when you're looking at where to fish this time of year, you can still go offshore and catch them deep, offshore structure, rock piles, stuff like that. But for me personally, I love fishing shallow, so that's primarily what I'm going to shift my focus to. This is kind of a transition point for a lot of the country, at least the central part, all the way down south. So I'm primarily going to look at stuff like flats, dark cover, dark shade, the thickest cover you can find, really thick grass, really dark shadows where you have like an overhanging tree and then an undercut bank. The shadow underneath that undercut bank will be extra dark, so it'll be extra cool for the fish, and that's where you're going to find them. So, that being said, let's jump into the top 5 baits and kind of go through it. If you guys like this long form content, make sure you leave me a comment and a like. Just lets me know that I should keep making these videos and you guys enjoy them. If you rather short form content, you can find me TikTok, Instagram, pretty well everywhere. I'll leave those links down in the description for you. But baits, let's go. First and foremost, mentioned it before last month, is a frog, okay? But not like a normal pointy nose frog. This is a poppin' frog. The poppin' frog this time of year is great because you can fish it open water, and you can fish it right on the edge of the grass and underneath the undercut banks and stuff like that. Primarily when I'm throwing a frog, it's a 7/6 heavy, 50-pound braid, just heavy enough for me to get it out of some thick cover, but not too stiff to where I can't get a long cast or a good skip. So basically, like I said earlier, when I'm throwing a frog, I'm going to skip it up underneath docks, way back in the corners. The active fish are going to be on the outer parts of the docks, on the corners of the pillars and stuff like that. So skip it up underneath, pop, and watch that frog annihilate it. Of course, skipping it up into undercut banks, stuff like that, underneath overhang trees. A lot of skipping this time of year, so if you haven't learned skipping, you should definitely do so. If you want me to do a video on how I skip, I'd be more than happy to. Let me know in the comments. But a frog this time of year can't beat it. Black, white, anything like that. And like I said, I throw it on heavy just in case I find some grass and I want to throw it in the grass and get them out. Next up, certainly not least, sticking with kind of the morning vibes, first thing in the morning. But with shad, the shad fry, because they are fry still, they're popping all over the place, making a lot of noise. Which leads me to my next one, and probably one of my favorite baits to throw overall, honestly, is a buzzbait. This is an accent fishing buzzbait, the Jacob Wheeler original series. These things are amazing. It's about the noise. You really want to have a lot of metal contact here, so it kind of squeals when you get this come through the water. This one's actually very used, and I should probably replace it. As far as the back, I don't ever run skirts. That's just me. I always have some kind of plastic trailer, whether it's a horny toad or a grub or whatever it is. This is a biospawn vial bug. These things just kick like crazy, so I really enjoy this. Shout out to Tackle Junkie 81 for getting me on the biospawn. I think it's 81. If it's not, I'll fix it. But I'll leave his link down in the description. That way you guys can check him out. He's full of good information. Real good guy. But buzzbait I'm throwing on 7.3 medium heavy. Now, one thing that I do differently in my buzzbaits than a lot of people is I throw it on fluorocarbon. This is Yozuri, 100% fluorocarbon, 12-pound, I think. I will go 15 if I'm kind of like the edge of a grass mat and I'm trying to get it out. But for the most part, I'm throwing 12. Now, the reason I throw fluorocarbon is because it stretches a little bit. And as you all know, and I'm sure most of you have done it, been out fishing, throwing a buzzbait, it's kind of a little sprinkle, little rain coming through. You throw it out there and you get that good cast and you're winding it back and you see the blow up and you instantly set the hook. If you have braid, 9 times out of 10, if you get too excited, you will pull that buzzbait out of his mouth and you won't get a good hook set. Now, everybody says, see the blow up, count to 3, set the hook. I don't have the patience for that. I get very excited. I see the blow up, I just react. So fluorocarbon gives me just enough stretch, not as bad as mono, but just enough stretch to set the hook and still get a good hook set in. I throw it on a 7-speed reel, so it's not too fast. It's just fast enough to keep it above the water. Um, that's just my personal preference. If you're new to frog or new to buzzbaits, I would recommend braid, and just try the counting trick if it works for you. The frog, I forgot to mention, I'm throwing on a 6-skill cyclone. It's an 8-speed. The buzzbait is also a 6-skill cyclone. All of my rods and reels are a 6-skill. So the frog is on a 6-skill Anora 7.6 heavy. The buzzbait is on a 6-skill creature 7.3 medium heavy. So next up, we're going to go to kind of a moving bait. So kind of like middle of the day after you throw your frog around a little while. Excuse me. The popping frog, buzzbait, stuff like that. You're just kind of more of a search bait at this point. I'm going to throw a square bill. I know a lot of guys are talking about deep diving crankbait still because it's still summer, but a square bill. This is Ott's Garage 6, Slim 6, yep. And of course, Vector Hooks, Tornado Trebles. I'm going to throw this. Guys, we're inside. The couch is in the way. There's stuff everywhere. My bad. But I'm going to throw the square bill on, you know, long flats that are outside the river channel where the fish are kind of hanging out in that shade. You get long banks of overhanging trees. You can throw buzzbait and work it down along the shade edge. Catch some more of them active fish. And also along the edges of docks, like I said earlier, your active bass are hanging out on the furthest points of the docks out, but still in the shade. So if you run a buzzbait past there and they're sitting on that pillar, they're going to come out and eat it. Square bill this time of year can be an absolute killer. And for me personally, because I like fishing shallow, I'm going to go with square bill over a deep diver. I'm not going to say I'm not going to bring it just in case, you know, middle of the day it gets hot and I want to go deep. But for the most part, I'm going to run a square bill instead. That's just me personally, though. I'm just a shallow water fisherman. This is on a 6-skill Crankin, 7.2 medium heavy. If you're only throwing a square bill, I'd probably go to a medium. That's just me, though. And vice versa, if you watched last month's video, if you're only throwing a deep diving crankbait, I would go to a heavy. I throw a medium heavy because a lot of times I fish as a co-angler in the Phoenix BFLs. So on the back of the boat, I don't have room for both. And the medium heavy is kind of a little bit of both, do all. You know, it does both, but it doesn't do either one really, really good. I do have it on a 6-speed Cyclone. I could probably go to a 7, but I like the 6 for the torque. And generally speaking, I'm kind of slow rolling square bills more often, but it's still fast enough that if I need to burn it, I can burn it. Now the next one is multiple baits, kind of, depending what you're doing. Shout out Mountain Dew for sponsoring this video. Totally kidding, but if you wanted to, that'd be cool. I'm trying to keep this not long-winded, but a lot to talk about this time of year. A worm. We talked about it last month, sorry. A big worm. It's just a killer. You know, June, July, August, even a little bit of September. You can't argue a big worm. This is a 3-aught Vector Hooks Mayhem flipping hook. Vector Hook also has a Magnum offset hook that I throw a lot. So, Vector Hooks also has a Magnum flipping hook. It's a Magnum offset hook. This is a 7-aught, but it's really, really good for a 10-inch worm like this. This is the Biospawn Plasma Tail. But with the longer shank, you get a lot better hookup ratios because your hook is further down the worm than it normally would be. And you still have enough bite in the hook itself to where the fish still has enough room to get around the whole bait. So that's a 10-inch worm with the Magnum offset hook. And as you can tell, a normal 3-aught, 4-aught would be up here as opposed to this hook point being right here. I don't know how well you guys can see that. But a lot more hook for the fish to grab onto. A lot better hookup ratio. 7-aught Magnum offset Vector hook. One of my go-tos for worms. I have a 4-aught on here because I was throwing a smaller worm. I just switched this up middle tournament about a month ago. Don't judge me. Anyways, so worms. If I'm fishing long flats, real slow, offshore, I'm throwing a big 10-inch, you know, curly tail, that's not the right word, ribbon tail worm, something like this. I don't like to flip and pitch this shallow though. I always have an issue because when you flip it, personally I like to grab the end of the bait. So when I grab the end of the bait and I flip it, I have a tendency to pull it back too much and put too much resistance on it, and I don't get the distance that I want, and I end up coming up short of my target a lot. So what I'll do is I'll go to like a shorter bait, like a 7-inch ribbon tail, or an 8-inch ribbon tail, or even something more sleek, like the plasma tail, you know, more straight tail worm, something like that, if you want to keep the 10-inch size, if that's your thing. I personally don't really know if it's real. Big worm equals big bite. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys feel like. But you can't go wrong with a worm. There's so many ways to throw it. Shaky head, Texas rig, drop shot, Ned rig. You name it, you can pretty well throw a Texas rig. Of course, the wacky and the Nico rig. Can't forget about that. But a worm this time of year is absolutely amazing. The conversation between Texposing and burying the hook. This one's buried for the most part. I was fishing around a lot of cover. But what I'll do is I'll poke it through just so it starts in the plastic. I don't know if you guys can see that. And then I'll just rebury it. That way the plastic's already broke, so I don't have to set the hook as hard. That's just me, though. That tends to work out in my favor most of the time. This worm actually caught me a fish last tournament, so shout out Bioswan. But you can't go wrong with a worm. You know, black and blue, green pumpkin, tequila sunrise, purple, plum, whatever colors you guys like. Purple in the Midwest is absolute killer, so it's really hard to argue some kind of tequila sunrise or plum. And last but not least, if you guys have been following the channel for a while, what in the hell? Oops. If you guys have been following the channel for a while, you already know what this bait's going to be, or you should have a pretty good guess. But it's a little bit different than what you're thinking, probably. So for me, fifth bait of the month, and one of the most important for me to have on the boat, is a jig, right? This is a 3/8 ounce structure jig. Now, I say it's a little bit different because you don't want just any jig, right? Last month, I talked about a football jig. This month, I'm talking about get a jig that you are confident enough to skip under anything all day, no matter what the situation. I like the Honey Badger structure jig. It's got the flat top, and then you put a flat bait on it. This is a Bass Reaper Contagion. Anything flat will do, and you kind of crawl, trail, or whatever you want. Something that's going to skip really well. So even if I hit this on the head with it being flat, it's going to bounce a little bit. But this thing skips amazing. I'll leave links in the description for these also. This is on a 6 kilo scythe, 7.3 medium heavy. This is 20 pound Yozuri 100% fluorocarbon. Normally I'll throw with 3/8 or a half. I'm going to say probably a half most of the time, unless the bass seem to be a little finicky or the water's a little more shallow and I'm not worried about getting the depth. But fishing out of the back of the boat, I try to get my bait down faster than my boater. I know that sounds bad, but I got to catch the fish that he's missing. So, and you don't have a lot of time in the back of the boat to throw out a 3/8 and let it sink and then work it, especially if he's burning the bank. You know, so you put on a half ounce, flip, hop hop, bring it back. Skip it underneath, hop hop, bring it back. If you don't get bit pretty quickly with a half ounce, you have enough weight and speed to just constantly flip and skip accurately, which I guess is the most important part. But you can't go wrong with a jig this time of year. But same concept as the frog and the buzzbait and the square bill. You're looking for shade, right? So underneath docks, again, the undercuts of banks, especially if you're fishing rivers. I have the Ohio River coming up here in about a week or two, 2 weeks, the Ohio River. So what I'm looking for on the banks is undercut bank, where there's tree limbs hanging over, shading it, and then it cuts back up underneath the bank, and it's really shaded. That's where your cool water is going to be. The bass can go in there and hide, and then when bait fish swim by, they can come out and ambush them. And that's just where you're going to get your bites. The darkest shade on the lake is what you should be looking for if you're fishing shallow. And if you don't have a lot of shade, you're going to look for the heaviest cover, right? So the thickest grass, the deepest the deepest grass you can find that's still shallow, if that makes sense. So you want, if you have a foot of water versus 3 foot of water and they have the same amount of grass, go to the 3 foot of water. Generally speaking, it's cooler and they have the grass there for the oxygen. So to sum it up, what you're looking for is shade, the darkest shade you can find. It's the most important thing if you're going to fish shallow this time of year. Secondly, I'd be looking for cover, docks, trees, wood, grass, whatever it is that you can find, some kind of cover. And basically, if you're going to fish on a body of water where it doesn't have a lot of cover or doesn't have a lot of shade, just go deep. Just abandon the shallow fish. Yes, you can catch a bag, and the deep water fish probably not going to be as big of a bag, but you'll be able to catch a limit out there still if you're a tournament angler and that's what you're looking for. But if you guys enjoy this kind of content, let me know, please. All the comments and likes, they encourage me to keep doing this, and it also lets me know what kind of videos you guys want to see and what kind of information you want to see. If there's anything you want me to talk about, let me know. If there's anything I can do better, let me know. I appreciate you guys. Go catch some fish and stay hydrated, stay cool. Appreciate you.